What are the biggest business challenges out there? Over the past 20 years, I've been compiling the biggest challenges that businesses have been facing over the course of their lifespan. This entails anything from small and tiny starting businesses to Fortune 1000 corporations, and it includes a portfolio of over 500 companies I've worked with myself directly through my companies, my agencies, advisory firms, SaaS firms, and everything in between. So we are going to break this down into 7 different core sections. Number 1, business strategy. We're going to talk about business strategy because this is one of the key components that differentiates one company from another. And part of the business problems falling into that specific section, we're going to reveal and we're going to break down into how to make your company better or how to deal with that consequence whenever you reach that stage of running a business yourself. So starting with 1, designing systems and processes. Building efficient and resilient systems is one of the toughest things in business. Why? Because when you start moving from 0 to 1, it's really pointless to build any systems and process whatsoever. However, the more you start growing and scaling up and hiring people and refining processes and dealing with more and more clients, the trickier it gets to actually take a business from one spot and move it to the other spot and be able to effectively juggle with everything else out there without having efficient systems and processes. This is why companies have been introducing anything from virtual assistants to CRMs and ERPs, marketing automation software, and all sorts of other ways to automate and optimize and refine processes, including project management systems, automated triggers, and any other ways to define better systems and processes together. Solutions may vary from stage to stage, but if you're just starting out, you may start as simple as a to-do list or direct messaging between a few people, and then slowly graduate to a project management system, to using Slack or Teams, and then moving up and up and up by introducing and implementing more processes within your organization. Number 2 is the lack of vision or direction. If you take a look at any large company out there, they have a mission statement, a vision statement, core values, and other principles that unite and get people on the same page. And this may seem silly at first, but it's actually extremely important. And we've done that across different organizations that lack a common vision and common concepts, have higher churn rate, people are leaving left and right, or they aren't committed, and so forth. The moment you start introducing mission and vision to your company, you differentiate yourself, you're trying to rule out the people who are not aligned with your vision and principles, and you're instead bringing the rest of the organization on your page and directly aligned to everything that you want to accomplish and achieve within the organization. So it's very important to have them. The same goes for core values. Introducing core values for us, for my agency and then my advisory firm, was extremely integral because we also implemented that into our feedback cycles. It's really easy to have 3 to 5 different core values and then align everyone as early as the job description process, the interviews, the onboarding, and then feedback sessions. So everyone is on the same page to what matters for the organization and how you should plan your career path based on the core principles that the company really requires from you. Number 3 is coping with market competition. Now, this one is really tricky because there are 2 ways of starting a business. Option number 1 is penetrating a red ocean from the get-go, meaning commodity service or anything that has thousands and thousands and thousands of competitors. For the most part, it's not a brilliant idea to start this way. It's always better and easier to differentiate and kind of refine a specific value proposition, something that really stands out and makes you feel different. It's pretty important for obvious reasons. It's easier to sell, less competition. You're not comparing prices or services. You're not comparing apples to cucumbers, right? So pretty important to start this way if possible. But in reality, a good chunk of the US population, actually over 34% now, is freelancers, and many of them are offering commodity services. Web design, web development, SEO, digital marketing, creative, and many others. So in reality, a lot of people are facing that competition, even if they're differentiating in different stages. But others, even if you differentiate, you're going to end up with copycats sooner than later. Think of AI, right? ChatGPT started and kind of became the first one, and then immediately Gemini showed up and Claude, and like lots of other services and chatbots and systems. Now, if you take a look at Product Hunt today, there are dozens of AI startups introduced every single day. And there's no surprise here, right? The market is starting to get oversaturated and pre-populated. AI providers are launching new models and are charging a fraction of the cost just to stay competitive. So dealing with all of that environment, how to stay on top and how to acquire and dominate more market attention and generally keep growing your customer base is pretty integral to how you build and run your business. Number 4 is keeping up with market transformations. Now, we just touched on AI for a reason. Why? Because lots of businesses are now disrupted due to AI being introduced late in 2022 and 2023. And of course, this wasn't the first time that AI came to mind, right? It's been around for 50 years in different shapes and forms, in machine learning and deep networks and deep learning and so forth. But the actual mass adoption of AI through GPT happened thanks to ChatGPT, which acquired over 100 million users over the course of just 2 months. So this was pretty spectacular and kind of one of the greatest accomplishments in the IT world over the past, again, 30 years or so. But nevertheless, it disrupted lots of businesses. Content creation became much faster. Image generation became much faster. All sorts of industry research, right? Google introduced AI overviews and almost killed publishing businesses over the course of a year. So lots of other industries and businesses are now being disrupted and have been disrupted over the past year and have to keep up with market transformations. So whatever you do, one of my best pieces of advice is always try to diversify. Don't require on a single growth channel. Always try to avoid the largest corporations and depending on them so that you don't end up, being slashed by losing 90% of your revenue due to Google changing their algorithms or Amazon changing their algorithms or Meta increasing their CPC costs or anything along those lines, right? You can never escape the biggest titans on the planet, that's for sure, but try to diversify, use first-party data, and just keep up with market transformations as best as possible. Number 5 is reducing dependencies on the founding team. Now, why is this important? If you're a founder or an executive or one of the co-founders, you know very well how important it is to be able to delegate. And delegation is one of the hardest things out there and has been one of the toughest things for me to learn as an executive myself. Why? Because with delegation, you're usually losing your competitive advantage. Your product quality is probably going to drop a little bit. Your communication is not going to be as steep. The people you delegate to don't understand your business model and your needs and your passion anymore. It's similar to the fact that the founder should be the best salesman of the company. They're the most passionate one. They live for the product. They thought of the product. They believe this is the greatest thing on the planet since the internet. So this is why you always have to keep in mind that delegation is necessary to scale, and delegation is going to lose some of the economy of scale. It's going to incur additional overhead and communication overload and different roles such as middle-level managers, account managers, coordinators, support team, quality assurance, and so forth. So this is going to turn into something different. But reducing the dependence of the founding team is extremely important. Otherwise, you cannot expect to be hopping on calls and responding to emails yourself as a founder and be able to build a team with dozens or even hundreds of team members over the course of the next few years. Number 6 is keeping the balance between quality and growth. In a similar fashion of reducing the dependence on the founding team that we just discussed, the next stage is making sure that you can afford to keep growing and scaling and introducing additional services and products and onboarding new team members, and also stick to a balanced level of quality that is satisfactory and is worth investing from your customers. Now, why is that important? You may have probably seen companies that get acquired by big behemoths, and a year from now, you can't even recognize them. You can't reach out support staff, quality is degrading, service level is degrading, response times are degrading, and the product just becomes a lot less usable or hot or helpful than it used to be early on when everyone was in there. However, it is impossible to scale without making some compromises along the way. This is why your telecom probably sucks, your internet provider probably sucks, you face lots of problems with all of the wholesale retailers out there. Quality is generally not as high the more you keep scaling up. However, you need to understand that a business needs to be sustainable, and if you're a 1%, 5%, 10% team and you want to scale, it's better for the organization to retain all of that institutional knowledge and all that know-how and understanding and kind of everything that you know about the business and everything that the business has ever accomplished over the past few years. Otherwise, if you provide the best service possible yourself, but you're affected by the buzz factor, right? Something wipes you out of the face of the earth, or you're just sick and unavailable, or you retire, or anything else happens, you need to change priorities due to a kid or sick parents or so, then of course you're not going to provide that service anymore. So your clients are going to lose because they expect 120% of the service quality from you directly, or you and your co-founders, instead of understanding that there is going to be some dip, some delays or price increase or some quality drop, but you're going to be able to sustainably provide that service at scale. So that's very important for you to understand, just as all the other businesses in our portfolio have studied and found out over the past few years. Number 7 is leveraging consultants and business advisors. Now, what we found out there is companies growing, they need to onboard new knowledge, they need to learn new things, they need to become better at new industries, and that's pretty universal regardless of what sort of business you're running or what sort of organizations you're into. Why? First, you have innovations and things like GPTs and AI that had been introduced over the past year and a half. Second, you have a lot of institutional knowledge outside of your organization that you need to keep up with, and your executive team and your founding team may not necessarily be aware of. And third, there are other organizations, both consultants and advisors and agencies, that just operate with a larger portfolio of businesses, so they know better simply because they work with more companies and they can analyze and assess industry trends. As someone who has been running an agency called Devrix and my business advisor called Growth Shuttle, we see that on a day-to-day basis and have been over the past 18 months for a reason. Why? With AI transformations, most businesses weren't really aware of how good that is and where and how can they implement that on a day-to-day basis. 2, with SEO and everything that happened on the Google front with AI overviews and helpful content updates, most businesses weren't aware of how to stay on top of these changes, which businesses were successful, and how to transform their business so that they can keep ranking up and still provide the same value and solutions possible. And 3, we do have access to a ton of data through all of our business and industry portfolio, so we know exactly how the certain industries move up and others go down collectively together, so we can always say and assess of whether that's something that's individual or kind of very specific to that specific business, or it's something that's across the entire audience, or it's something that's across the entire market. So it's pretty important to understand that there are lots of examples here. Of course, you can hire consultants and advisors from McKinsey and Accenture and Deloitte and all the other big consulting companies because they have access to that broad portfolio of data. And our agency has collectively gathered over 10 billion pages over the past year across our portfolio, and sold over $1.5 billion of product. So we have all that intel of product categories that show, or content that generates traffic, and different hooks and titles and everything else that works across the audience due to the sheer number of clients that we work with. So once again, understanding how to work with advisors and consultants and also third-party vendors and agencies is something that every single organization is facing, because all organizations understand that they need to grow, they need external help, they need external support, but they don't know how to find it and how to manage it and how to operate it and how to assign and balance budget and everything around that circle. So this is why it's pretty important and one of the key business challenges. Now, moving to the second category, which is marketing. Now, we just wrapped up business strategy, and if you like this video so far, please like and comment here, subscribe, make sure that you let me know that you like the video, because I can keep making up these videos if it's something that's of value for you, of course. So now let's move to marketing and to the next biggest business challenge that we have identified. So number 8, building effective marketing strategies. Now, this should be a no-brainer, right? We know that there are certain channels that help a business grow, and these channels, to be completely honest, they are different for different organizations. What works for a high-ticket B2B consultancy is not what works for direct-to-consumer business, and that's only natural, because when you sell a $10 product or infomercial on Facebook, it's different from selling a $100,000 contract, enterprise-grade value, server infrastructure, and so. So these channels are different, but the strategy is evolving itself. So understanding how to build that strategy is contingent on some of the other factors related to culture, to hiring, marketing to management, working with advisory and strategists, managing that marketing team internally and their roadmap and assessing how valuable it is. This is the reason why this is one of the core business challenges out there. Number 9 is properly allocating marketing resources. Now, why is that important? What we saw over the pandemic and early after is that lots of organizations kept overhiring. And that, of course, included all sorts of roles, from admin and marketing and sales and even IT and support and so on, because the market was so high for most of the industries out there that companies have been generating profits and been pumping up ads and just needed more and more people to handle that process. Now, this isn't necessarily very effective. Why? Because when you introduce more people to a project, when you introduce more people to a specific operation, then it's not really that efficient, right? You have more meetings, more coordination, more communication, more back and forth, more people talking to one another, and it's not necessarily becoming very easy. Additionally, you also have some cultural differences and issues. Someone maybe having a hard time communicating with a colleague of theirs, or you also have sick leaves, or you also have people who are staying at home with remote and pandemic in different time zones. So it rapidly becomes harder to manage these operations. So effectively allocating these marketing resources is one of the key challenges that we are facing. The marketing services that we offer, for example, we often collaborate both internally with teams. We are upskilling them and training them and providing playbooks and kind of revealing most of the strategies, or we're doing some work alongside them. They're kind of managing the process, but we're doing execution, or the other way around. We provide the playbooks and we are overseeing their execution. And additionally, we also work with other consultants and freelancers and agencies along the way. It's only natural because there are different initiatives. It doesn't always make sense for you to build an entire marketing team that specializes in different things, because whatever you want to say, different people become niche subject matter experts in different initiatives. If you're a great TikTok marketer, you're not necessarily a great Instagram marketer, X marketer, Thread marketer, LinkedIn marketer, let alone email, SMS, HubSpot, SEO, and all of the other initiatives out there. So in reality, managing different channels requires different skills, and you cannot afford to hire 12 people for 12 different channels unless you're making enough to compensate for that payroll. Number 10 is measuring marketing initiatives. Now, this is one of my favorites. So marketing generally falls into two different circuits. We have brand marketing, and then we have performance-based marketing. Why? Because the nature of marketing is being able to shape and package a product, a solution, or a service in a way that resonates with the customer so that this helps them make a buying decision and potentially trigger them to buy. That's the core essence of a marketing. So you have two ways to do that, right? It's either performance-based marketing, which is paying for ads and paying for kind of outbound and other initiatives that you can directly correlate one to the other, or you generally have brand-based marketing, which is making your company look better without the intention to buy immediately, but long-term making the process easier. So two problems that have been happening, and we see that increasingly becoming more and more important. So the first one is most of the performance marketing is no longer as efficient. While during the pandemic, it was easier to generate great results with performance-based marketing, now it's not. And the more high-ticket solutions are having longer buy sales cycles. As an example, Sixth Sense is reporting that the average buying cycle 2023-2024 is around 12 months, and it takes 8 months for buyers to make a buying decision and kind of do the short list and then start calling the shortlisted vendors for any sort of solution. So for that extended buying cycle, what we see continuously is the following. We see that companies are having a hard time justifying paid expenses because they run into negative ROI. While on the other hand, there are different expenses such as podcasts and newsletters, PR campaigns, or like sponsoring specific journals, and they don't necessarily correlate with what's happening. We also tend to call that, especially into B2B field, a signal-based attribution, which means that we need to try and track down different signals and figure out whether they are selling or not, whether they are efficient or not, whether a specific channel is bringing business or not. For instance, you may get a message on Instagram that's completely unrelated to your Instagram profile or the campaigns because your buyer has actually seen your, let's say, Facebook ads or LinkedIn thought leadership content, or had read your blog post for the past 5 months and just decided to reach out on Instagram. We see the same thing happen happening quite a lot with people taking a look at Reels and following an account for a while. And when the time comes, they go straight to the website and they fill out a contact form, right? So it looks unnatural because it feels like the website is the leading channel, and this is what brought the conversion, and this is the key point of contact, especially when you don't see a paid ad attributed to this one. But in fact, the buying cycle is long enough so that brand awareness and attribution is taking a lot longer than what it used to previously. Number 11 is building a corporate brand. Now, what we also saw now, especially during the market downturn, is that lots of businesses are having a hard time selling. Why? Because trust at businesses is at its lowest, and businesses are having a hard time for different reasons. Now, when the market is tough, the buyer consumption is getting lower, meaning that customers are buying less and are putting a lot of scrutiny towards other companies due to all these layoffs and bankruptcies and companies going under and lots of VC rounds that are failing through because businesses aren't actually profitable and successful. So consumers being so suspicious means that you need to have a brand to prove your possible customers, your existing clients or prospects that you're a real business, you're going to be there in 6, 12, 18 months from now, and you're going to keep and protect their interests. Otherwise, it's just really hard for them to give you and trust you with their own business if they aren't sure you're going to be around afterwards. Number 12 is relying on marketing for lead generation. And once again, marketing can fall into different camps. We talked about brand marketing and performance marketing, but in reality, there are also other factors. There's employer marketing, there's recruitment marketing, there are other sectors where marketing is being applied effectively, including branding itself and packaging, which again, together with advertising and PR fall into different circles, but I digress. So marketing is not necessarily used for lead generation, but it's also one of the most effective and most expected ways to generate revenue. How specifically is this being aligned and assigned into a business? It's pretty tough because marketing and sales should play together, but these two departments are not necessarily playing together. This is why HubSpot coined the S marketing term, like sales and marketing. And this is why, performance marketers and go-to-market teams and everyone else is trying to build a stronger, a better funnel for them to be able to operating and executing effectively. So the pull back from traditional paid PPC marketing, the performance marketing popular over the past year, to brand marketing and to more traditional initiatives, to thought leadership, to founder-led marketing is kind of what is being one of the key considerations in teams, trying to assess resources and trying to define the roadmaps for CMOs and for new marketing teams and even for marketing agencies to figure out what is the best way to use marketing for lead generation and what portion of marketing time and spend should go into lead generation itself. Okay, done with the marketing chapter now. So section number 3 is recruiting. Why is recruiting important? No need to dive into that too much, but of course, growing a team means building a resilient, a large, and effective corporation and organization. Many of the top businesses that you're using, such as Meta and Google and Amazon, they employ hundreds of thousands of people. In fact, right now, Amazon employs over 1.3 million people. So you can imagine that you cannot really grow an effective company without spending a lot on your recruitment efforts. So starting with this one. Number 13, hiring new employees. Now, needless to say, the hiring process is one of the most important ones because the way you hire people and the way you vet them and interview them and extend an offer is really differentiating whether you hire A talent or B talent or C talent for two different reasons. First, if you cannot attract that talent to your organization, your employer branding is bad, your job description is poor, your interviewing principles are bad, they're not even going to attend the interview. Even if they sit in the interview, you may not convey the right level of trust for them to be able to join. Because once again, great people, talented people, they're not desperate to work for anyone, right? They want to work for a respectable organization, for a great leadership team, for a strong founding team. And this is why you need to show your best, because you are selling them as much and if not less than what they're selling to you. So it's very important to understand that. That's why hiring is so critical. And then even if you do that, you're going to hop into the next step, which is onboarding. And this also taps into the entire circle of attracting candidates and getting them to an interview and then doing the proper interview, potentially some trial, extending an offer, getting an offer signed, starting, onboarding, assessing, and kind of going through all of that cycle. So hiring is, of course, one of the toughest things. really hard to find great talent, really hard to afford great talent. So it's an art, and it takes a lot of time for everyone to find out, understand their specific, unique business proposition and kind of what they do best, their unique selling value, and trying to find the best talent out there. Number 14 is founding new departments. Now, especially in the era of AI, now we have chief AI officers and we have AI experts. We also have other people working as individual contributors, or you may have different experts in a team that have to kind of start a separate initiative, sometimes maybe working. So you may have an agency department, an R&D team, a labs, or something else that's very unique. So founding these departments and figuring out how they operate, how you're measuring performance, how you're figuring out how effective they are, how they speak to others, what sort of the org chart looks like, how are leadership teams talking to one another, is pretty tricky. But in reality, the more you grow, the more you're going to expand and kind of build different divisions, different segments, and different teams, which is pretty critical for you to grow as an organization. 15, retaining top talent. That's one of my favorites. Now, some of the best talent out there is really hard to keep, because the best people out there, or at least 80% of them, are going to either found their own business or move and hop to as a consultant or something else, or like hop to a larger organization, and it's really hard to keep them around, right? Of course, there are some great people and some great organizations that stay around and may even retire in your organization, right? So we've seen cases like this, especially in larger organizations like Google. HubSpot is a great example. Some hosting companies, people who have spent 15 years within the organization and they're still committed and truthful to the company, and they've really found their place. But it's generally really hard to keep great talent around. It's really easy for many of them to be persuaded by a large competitor or a hot startup, or be offered a co-founding seat somewhere or something else. Or it may be pretty easy for them to just find new business and decide they want to work for themselves. Now, in all fairness, if you're a founder, if you've ran a business yourself, or you've been an executive for a while, you know very well how tough it is to build and to run a business. The sleepless nights, working over the weekends, being worried when you lose some business, payroll, delayed invoices, and so many other different challenges. Many of them we are going to cover here. But generally speaking, you know that, but your staff probably doesn't know that. So when the grass is always greener on the other side, it's also easy to lose talent. So just be aware of that. Try to make the most out of retaining people. Have open communication, pay them well, try to assign, the type of work that's great. Don't keep around, toxic people. And there's so much more that we kind of go dive deep into our advisory program and kind of us working as an agency for other companies and retaining people. And kind of as a side note, one of the core reasons why we have been working as an agency for some of our clients for 8+ years so far is that it's so easier for them to just make sure that we deal with recruitment on our end, with onboarding, with training, with keeping the people sticking to one another and kind of working great as a team. And they just cannot, or they don't want to develop that team. So some of our clients that have been long-standing with us for 8+ years have actually had multiple people leaving on their end, product managers, account managers, chief product officers, layoffs, or most of the time they're just churning, like every year and a half or two, and we keep the institutional knowledge in-house. So it's easier for them to make sure that we are always aware of what's going on, and we can always delegate or reassign or kind of onboard other people as needed and handle that process transparently, and yet at the same time don't bother them with all that recruitment and onboarding cycles. Number 16, diversity. Now, one of the sensitive topics out there is diversity, quality, and inclusion, and we want to make sure as business founders and executives and people in charge of that we stick to what the people want. We make sure that everyone is feel welcome and included, and we don't really put any racial considerations or any other obstacles or blockers to minorities or specific people with different needs. It's very important because you never know how you're going to end up, or your people, your family, your friends. We want to make sure that we are as inclusive and giving great opportunities to everyone out there, because you may have been fortunate enough to found a business or be executives in a successful business, but not everyone is. And if we want to make the world a better place and get rid of wars and hostility and poverty and everything going on, we all have to contribute to that. One of the best ways to contribute is build great businesses, generate revenue so that we can hire more people and give pay raises and help them build better lives and them helping to their own communities. But that also means that we need to be inclusive and understanding on different people, their needs, their differences, their hobbies, political interests, and everything else. Regardless of whether it's something that they chose or something they were born with. Super important. Don't forget that starting with a small team, you may be more in a bro culture or girl power or something else, but you definitely want to make sure that building a large, successful company is dependent on being inclusive and being understanding to everyone and their needs. Speaking of number 17 is building a thriving company culture. Now, why is that important? So one of the worst things that can happen in your organization, if you're making enough money and have built a team that's capable and skilled, is having several toxic people, because all of your top talents, like all of your greatest people, may churn and leave due to the fact that some people are kind of backstabbing, water cooler talks that are gossiping and doing some crazy stuff that's really against your organizations, or giving mixed signals and different commands and so forth. So make sure you do anything in your power possible to build strong and great company culture where people can speak for themselves and escalate issues upstream, and just making sure that you have that level of democracy internally, but also that level of control on top to prevent any sort of sidewing and any sort of internal battles internally. It's really toxic and hostile if people spend the time on internal politics and drama and issues instead of actually having fun and making money for themselves and for the business. So this is one pretty severe challenge, especially for corporations and organizations. The larger the organization, the trickier is to make sure that people play along in the same sandbox, but nevertheless is one of the issues that you have to deal with yourself at scale. And starting the fourth chapter, which is management. Management, needless to say, managing people, managing initiatives is one of the core issues. So let's start with the first one here. So number 18 is time management. Why is that important? Because when you start out and you deliver a service or a product or build something, it's pretty straightforward because you try to do your best to deliver that in the shortest possible period of time with the highest possible quality. You have the incentive because you're going to be on the street and you won't really have food on your table unless you're able to deliver to that promise, right? Pretty straightforward. However, hiring more and more people, incentives are being misaligned because people do not want to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week just to make sure that something's delivered with the highest possible quality. They don't. It is a job for them. You need to understand that, and you can never expect anyone to work as hard as you keep scaling. It's just as simple, right? It is a contract. It is a negotiation, right? Between you and your team, between you and the people you hire. It's just there are different incentives and different alignments. Even if you're in an executive spot, it's still the same. As an executive, you may be a C-level, you may be a VP, you may have a great opportunity to sit on top or get equity or shares or so. It's a different incentive, but you can still not expect the same from other people who want to clock out at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. They may be available on a call, they may be checking their email once over the weekend, but you just cannot expect them to be committed 24/7. So in order to make the most out of that, you need to make sure that the time management is allocated properly. And time management includes different things: not wasting time on meetings, not too much back and forth, better project organization, fewer syncs, better alignment between tasks. All of these kind of fall into the time management circle. Number 19, as a manager, it's working on the business. Now, there's a great saying that essentially goes, you should work on the business, not in the business. And the more you scale up as an executive, it's really important to not get bogged down by day-to-day tasks, that you have teams and people to work on, and instead elevate and work on strategy, on roadmaps, on everything else. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be fully detached and kind of sit on the board and kind of work elsewhere and just kind of chat with your, general director once every 3 months. That's not what it's all about, but you need to focus most of your time and attention on the high level, bigger picture. Because without setting the right direction and calibrating it and helping it kind of move in the right place, without doing all of that, you are going to end up essentially delivering nothing, because people are going to be like hamsters in a hamster wheel and just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And the team is going to miss on all of the innovations, all the workplace principles, all the new opportunities and channels and everything else. So it's your spot, it's kind of your goal to understand that, to take a look at the P&L, to follow on new opportunities, new industries, ways to optimize and automate your business, and like pretty much everything else. So try to be protective and defending on your time. Try to not really dive into these rabbit holes. Let your team handle these, because that's how they're going to learn autonomy. And again, your goal is just setting the direction and helping them out and enabling them, but not spending 60 hours a week working on a day-to-day, responding to tickets, getting onto emails, fighting fires. You should be leveraging and delegating more for these challenges. Number 20 is communication. Now, in all fairness, I went through a bunch of different communication exercises, especially over the past few years. I took on a business coaching certificate from Mindvalley. We had several Harvard team leadership and communication exercises at the office for my agency teams. We had Amazon training for communicating like an Amazonian. So we've got lots and lots and lots of kind of communication techniques exercises. We use MBTI, the Myers-Briggs personality test, internally. We also went on the disc profiling internally. We have Enneagram. So it's maybe getting overboard, but case in point is that people are different. You cannot talk the same to an extrovert as you do as an introvert. You cannot expect them to behave the same way on a Zoom meeting or an Insight meeting. You can't speak the same way to a dominant person in disc versus an influential person versus a steady person. So what you need to understand at scale is that people are not alike. That's very, very, very important to understand. And you need to understand also how to speak their language, how to better convey and communicate what they want to, and how to both receive feedback and provide feedback. Super important, something I cannot overstate enough. It's just integral to running a business. Otherwise, you may lose great talent with great resources, and you may demotivate it by simply not communicating properly to them. So super important to recognize that. Number 21 is motivating employees. Similarly to communication, you may have great people with great skills and opportunities, but just waste their time on meetings while they're introverted, right? Or, expect them to work in an async remote organization while they're influential and extroverted, and they need like a team environment and team plays and working with people and like engaging and going to events and stuff, right? Lots of different ways to just demotivate people. Same goes for lack of vision, lack of direction, lack of goals, lack of innovation. Different people are different. Back when I started my agency in 2010, I had a simple rule when hiring new people. I had a small, sticky note when I was always writing down for every single person that started the organization the core 3 top most important things that I have found out for them. Like, what are those 3 things that if I make sure that they're always adhered to, like they're kind of a priority for them in the organization, what are these 3 things that if I make sure they happen, these people are going to stay forever, and any other problem is not going to be valid anymore, right? It's just not going to be a problem in the first place. So this worked pretty well. Just for context, so out of the first 3 people that we hired, 2 of them are still with me. So one of them is here for like 15 years. One of them is turning 12 or 13 this week. So needless to say, it's a very effective process, and it's very helpful to do that. And by the top 3 things, of course, I mean, what do they need the most? Is it the ability to make as much money as possible? Because some people are just very money driven. Is it having more time with the family? Is it flexible work hours? Is it autonomy? Is it, job title bumps? Is it having the opportunity to volunteer? Is it the opportunity to lead training programs, internships, anything else, right? Is it the ability to have like a book club and just meet with other people and common values? Is it having a soccer club by the organization, right? Lots of different reasons that make different people thrive and just really help them connect to the organization. So starting with this or any other framework to just make sure that people are motivated is something that's going to help you scale your team in the long term. Number 22 is strategic leadership. Now, I've had issues with that myself, and that's why I'm going to explain it probably better than others on YouTube. Now, strategic leadership is making sure that your management team, your leadership team, managers, directors, VPs, like, calls, C-suite, whatever it is, they have strategic know-how, and they know how to think strategically. So very common problem. Again, this is about all the biggest business challenges. Very common problem that we face all the time is people who have been promoted to a management, to a director level, but they lack the necessary skills and the competence and the know-how to drive a team forward, right? They're great hard workers. They have great hard skills, but they lack the skills that require them to be able to build a successful team and grow a resilient organization and kind of provide know-how and think strategy and optimizing and processes and everything else. It's similar to the difference between, interns turn into entry-level staff, into juniors, into mid-levels and seniors and team leads and architects and like VPs and like directors of engineering and so on, right? There are different stages of the process, and that's only natural and that's totally normal. No worries about it, right? But if you let your people, you just upskill them, you just upgrade their title and their like capabilities, what they can do the organization, without teaching them and expecting them to think strategically, they're just going to repeat the same thing over and over again. They won't know how to pick between, hey, should I hire? Should I get a freelancer? Should I work with the agency? What's going to deliver the higher ROI, right? Should I cut costs now to increase the buffer or not? Like, what's the best way to get there? What portion of time should go to R&D? What are some necessary initiatives that we need to experiment, because it's going to be critical to do that possible thing in the next 18 months, even though I fully know that we're going to lose money in the meantime, or it's going to be an experiment, right? So they need to think as kind of mini executives in a sense. They need to understand P&L, profit and loss statements and expenses and operating expenses and kind of vendors and all of the other things. And they need to figure out when and what to do in different stages in time. Really, really, really important. I cannot understand that enough. Otherwise, you're going to end up with overpriced or overtitled mid-level managers or supervisors who cannot lead the direction. You cannot take strategic decisions. Just don't allow that to happen. 23 is hybrid work. Now, we had all of that work from home during the pandemic, and we know that organizations, the vast majority of them, they want to get back to the office. They want to return to the office. Now, again, there are pros and cons to both cases. If you're a team of 3 people and you can work remote, great. There's a great reason why Google and Meta and Amazon and everyone else can't, because when you employ 250,000 people, it's a horrible way to just expect them all to stay remote and be productive and committed and be able to jive with other people and build a great company culture and like a million other things that make on-site make a lot of sense for all those large companies. So lots of them are going to be in-house, or they're going to require some sort of on-site work. However, hybrid is also there. We know it is, and companies are also trying to respect that in a sense, or have different ways to kind of provide different opportunities, or like, let's say, meet just twice a week or some other options. So handling hybrid work is one of the biggest challenges. Again, some companies are more critical to others. Some companies are going to transformation and honestly, they can't even understand what the outcome is going to be. But in any case, it's of course one of the caveats and one of the issues that most are dealing with themselves. Number 24 is the limited focus mode. Now, I really hate that myself. So I'm a big proponent of async. I actually have an article on Entrepreneur that I wrote in 2022 that's about asynchronous communication. So I keep sending them to the dozens of DMs and cold outreaches that reach out and ask me to hop on calls and deal with stuff that I don't want to do. Additionally, I have a blog post on my blog that also became one of the top read blogs, 16 reasons why I don't pick up my phone. Most of them included, I'm in a meeting, I'm with family, I'm outside and I'm driving and I'm not ready to pick up meetings, I'm in deep dive session, and, you can kind of imagine the list. But in most cases, people are getting interrupted a lot more often than needed. So having that focus time is really important to protect internally, because lack of focus time is going to impact both motivation and, of course, productivity. Because there's a thing called interruption science, and interruption science is dealing with analyzing how long does it take for people who were distracted to get back to their normal state. And some studies report up to 45 minutes of people trying to figure out where they left, or, they've been thinking about lots of different processes and different things that have been happening and, being unable to actually get back to where they were. Now, if you think of a very big project, or like you're organizing a family trip or something like that, right? You need to think of a million things. Okay, what were the dates? What should I take? Okay, so hotel, we have airplane tickets, we have to take, the swimsuit for the kids, and we have this and we have that. And okay, so travel dates, it's 6 a.m. in the morning, meaning we need to leave at about 3 o'clock. So where should we go to sleep for that, right? So you can keep diving into that rabbit hole, but there are a million things you can think of, right? So in most cases, especially the more important the work, whether it's development or marketing campaign or strategy or financial modeling or tracking down invoices, due payments, it is a long backlog of things you're thinking. So if people keep coming in and interrupting or calling you or just DMing you with some boring stuff, you are always going to reset to the initial stage, which is pretty tiring, and you cannot start all over. So that's why it's very important to appreciate focus work and try to limit it as best as possible by having some focus blocks or, meetings just in the morning, or, a very specific channel for interruptions, but people can be D&D throughout the rest of the time, or some other ways to let people do their focus time as much as possible. Chapter number 5 is sales. Now, everyone knows about sales. Everyone cares about sales because a business cannot run without sales, right? Well, in some cases, of course, if you're direct to consumer or something that's very cheap infomercial, you may not need sales. You're just good enough with marketing. But in most cases, sales is what keeps the world moving forward and what keeps revenue in the loop. So let's jump right in. Number 25 is landing new business. Now, needless to say, especially if you're a small business, if you're just starting out, landing new business is one of the most critical things. In all fairness, over the past year or whenever the economy is down, every single business is dealing with sales challenges because their older playbooks, the way they ran business previously, they're no longer working. They're not delivering the same results they used to be. So they are trying to figure out how to compensate for overhiring and for, headcount that's not really delivering the same old results. So it's getting into that rabbit hole, and this is why it also made it on one of the top 38 business challenges we're discussing here. But needless to say, closing new business is one of the critical things. Again, it is a combination of lots of different things. I don't just want to blame that on sales, don't just want to blame that on branding or marketing or product or the executive team. It's a combined effort, but great salespeople, great business development reps, they know the channels they need to undertake, they know the right people, they go to the right events, they do kind of on-site visiting clients at their office, they do dinners, like 10 speaker dinners, lots of other strategic opportunities to make sure they unlock new channels and they make strategic connections that help them scale in the future. So once again, no surprise, closing new business is one of the biggest challenges here. 26 is retaining existing customers. Now, this one is a little different. So there are several different ways to build a business. So first off, you need to either upsize your contracts if you want to grow, or close new contracts, or acquire companies and leverage that existing business that you just bought in and then cross-sell and just upsize your contracts as a result, right? So in that sense, when evaluating a business, there are normally two things that we look into a business: whether it has recurring revenue, meaning subscriptions that people pay month to month, or reoccurring revenue. We expect them to close new business, a certain number of transactions every single month. Now, needless to say, recurring revenue is easier to trust on. Like, you can assess how long are people paying, they're staying for a continued period of time. It's just kind of safer. But reoccurring revenue is also fine if you can, in both cases, just retain people as best as possible. So customer retention is one of the key challenges, the key factors that we are seeing is playing a pretty integral role here. So retention, of course, is one of the things we need to increase as much as possible, because retaining a customer longer is increasing their lifetime value. And the higher lifetime value means that we can afford to pay more for the customer acquisition cost. So we can pay more to retain customers because an average customer is paying us more over the lifetime of a business. That's why customer retention is so important. It takes on average 5 times more expensive to close new customers than retaining existing ones. So it's just a better deal once you have them out the door. 27 is maximizing word of mouth. Referral-based marketing, again, recommendations from existing clients, from account managers who change jobs or other people, is one of the best and most efficient channels out there, because there's nothing that works as well as a recommendation. Trusting other people, trusting people in your circle is the best way to find a vendor, right? If you need a construction worker, a cleaning lady, anything else, you're always going to start asking people around you, hey, I need this. Do you have any recommendations? Do you have a designer you know for that? Do you have a marketing agency for that? Do you have a consultant or so, right? So people always start from their internal circles first, or their colleagues, or their kind of business partners. And if that doesn't work out, then they go through that traditional process of looking into Google and reviewing G2 and Trustpilot and Quatch and all the other sources. So up until then, kind of the channel that makes the most value and kind of generates the best results is word of mouth. So try to maximize word of mouth. You need great net promoter score, meaning customers who are super happy with you. You need to onboard more customers just so you know you have more people that kind of work across the organizations. You need to keep in touch with people who kind of left the organization and they're working elsewhere, because it's a great word of mouth, and just kind of trudging that process to make sure you can maximize it. And also don't forget your partners. Number 28 is identifying new sales channels. Now, what we saw over the past year is several things happened more or less at the same time. First, Google introduced the helpful content update. This was a specific update that killed a bunch of different businesses, publishers, service-based providers, and some of the other businesses in the industry by giving a lot of value to directories such as Reddit and Quora, and some specific publishers such as Forbes, in favor of slashing 90% of the traffic for traditional publishers. They also did some other things such as outranking Indian websites like Times of India and some others that just happen to be showing up everywhere in Discover, in normal search, and so forth. So regardless of what the reason is, and then also introducing AI overviews, they broke the search big time. Right? So that's kind of what happened. We saw the same thing happening on LinkedIn by reach dying anywhere from 50% to 90%. And we also saw that sales development like BDR outbound initiatives had a 50% success rate compared to what we saw 2 years ago. And we also see that paid campaigns are underperforming for specific markets. In other words, traditional channels are no longer working for most businesses, and we work with businesses, with companies to identify new channels. The way we do that both on the agency side and my consultancy is, first off, we use our go-to-market, our broader go-to-market playbook that integrates different motions: founder-led motion, outbound, running low-ticket offers, affiliate, event, like digital events, partnerships. It's kind of a very large kind of playbook. And second, running tons of experimentations for new offers on a monthly basis to uncover reframing what a business does in a way that's kind of better refined, with kind of a fixed price, and just running better offers. We do that internally, by the way. So we are actually building new services this way through using the same experimentation framework. But moral of the story is that identifying new sales channels, while it wasn't one of the key considerations over the past 3 years, is now turning into one of the key challenges that businesses are facing. 29 is pricing negotiations. Now, procurement is one of the things that I personally really dislike, because it's all about the negotiations, trying to get a discount, trying to get a better deal, trying to get this, trying to get that. My personal belief is that you should be paying full price, because this helps you expect full quality and everything that was promised in the contract. If you get a 10% off or so, or a 15% off, you can almost certainly expect that internally within the organization, management is going to decrease the importance of your contract and is going to prioritize hire the people who pay full price. It's simple as that. The moment they get an opportunity, they're kind of overworked, or kind of their pipeline is growing up, they're going to kick you out if you're at the bottom of the funnel in terms of like hourly rates or margins, or the way they kind of calculate that internally. So discounts are rarely something that comes without consequences. But regardless, as part of business, you have to do it yourself, and you have to be able to play that negotiations game. Again, there are different rules of thumb. Try to figure out what works in your market. Try to figure out what the public offers are, and try to find a channel that makes sense for you. Like annual pricing, or like, let's say, get a month or two free for annual over a certain threshold, throw in some things for free, or like a consulting session, or invite them out, or drive to them to attend a specific event, or do a specific campaign together. Different ways to structure that. But once again, try to turn the discount conversation into not just paying less, but instead paying full price and getting some promotions and kind of some additional offers to make sure you stay aligned with your traditional pricing. Number 30 is building strategic partnerships and networking. Now, this should be common sense, right? You want to be working with the right people, and you want to work with high net worth people and large corporations and organizations and do the most out of the business relationship working with them, right? Again, common sense. However, the way you prioritize that time and the way you structure that is really the hardest part. First, many of these people are attending a bunch of different events. Many of them are international or a different state. You need to be aware of that. So it's becoming expensive to go to so many different events. You can't do that yourself. You probably need to send your people. So you have paid road staff, then you need to pay flights and tickets and accommodation and stuff. And they also don't do their regular day-to-day in order to go to international events, and you pay expensive ticket prices to be able to negotiate and all that. So it just turns into an expensive investment to also go to all these events, potentially do speakers dinners or buy them lunches or some other things in order to keep these relationships going. So it's not affordable to do that at scale on site, even though it's the most efficient thing possible. So organizations, kind of what they're dealing with, again, we're talking about challenges. Some things are obvious and straightforward, but it's about how you're structuring that time. Is they allocate a portion of the budget, marketing spend, sales, whatever you want to call it, retention marketing, a portion of the budget to these initiatives, and then they prioritize which initiatives has the best yield out there, what's going to deliver the best results for the least amount of time in the most efficient way possible. So roughly speaking, this is kind of how strategic partnerships and relationships work. Over time, again, you can hire a partnership manager, partnership director. You can also delegate that to your COO, CMO, like a director of marketing, to handle this relationship. But you also have to know that online isn't working as well. You also have to have a kind of strategic partnership plan in place that makes sense. It's not just swapping logos from one side to the other, and you kind of deliver great results in turn of that. And if you want to make it real, you probably need to organize events and meet on site and do campaigns together and stuff to nurture these relationships. And then you don't want your C-suite to be spending half of their time doing that unless it has proven ROI. Okay, chapter 6 is technology. One of my favorite ones, even though not necessarily one of the most critical ones in 2024. So starting right in. Problem 31 is solving productivity problems. Once again, we need to take care of time management. We need to make sure that our teams work efficiently. So solving productivity problems is one of the key challenges that businesses are dealing with. This is why we have technical implementations and augmentations of project management system, marketing automation, ERP, CRMs, and tons of other business process management tools, kind of automation, kind of workflow management systems, pings and slacks into different instant messaging platforms. All of this trying to make the process easier, to automate most of that, and to just make the checklist straightforward for every single person or the organization. This is part of the technological advancements. Your CTO or CIO or someone else internally is either building this in-house, which is most of the time not a great idea, or implementing and incorporating the right industry solutions without causing too much burden, both financial and time-wise in onboarding, but trying to maximize and just improve productivity across the organization. Number 32 is automating business processes. Now, there are a lot of cases. What we see is a single process, a single procedure is comprised of 10 to 15 to 20 different steps, right? So let's say we have hiring, right? So what does hiring entail? We have to write a job description, post across multiple places, track systems with an ATM, then, do some screening, can do this, and then like invite people to interview, and then, or like give them a test tasks, and then report that, and then this, and then, if they're hired, extend an offer and send that offer and send that to, accounting and the HR team, and, add their record. Like, there are a million things that you need to do, right? So most of the time, many of these are getting lost, or they're not documented properly, they're not sourced properly. So we need to make sure that we have that under control. So many of these can be automated, right? You can have a system that just, you fill in the description, it automatically posts that to other systems. It automatically sends a daily report of applicants. When you approve them, it automatically sends a template to that. So there's a lot of automation that come into play, including with answers. You can now use AI to just write auto-generated responses, which is not super personable, but if it's kind of nice, you can actually respond to more people and respect them better by sending a more or less automated response, which is also personalized this way. So automation is another factor that's playing a pretty important role. Number 33 is deploying technology for innovation. Now, again, one of the core challenges right now is that we have certain, and AI again is another great example over the past year, we have certain technologies or certain initiatives or certain things that are definitely delivering better results. And GPTs and other tools are a great example for that, right? So why don't you use a tool like Fraser, for example, to do SEO copy? And by the way, I'm not affiliated with them. Or why don't you just use Claude to generate kind of budget spreadsheet discussions, or kind of upload a PDF and try to get a summary out of it, or again, lots of different tools. This video is going to go into Opus in order to kind of get shorts for social media. I'm not going to bother my editors actually dealing with all that. So lots of other tools need deployment, and that innovation needs to be incorporated into our organization. So one of the challenges is how, which tools, when, and who, and kind of what's going to be the process, how many of these innovations can be deployed, how is training going to happen, and these considerations are some of the challenges that corporations are dealing with. 34 is training staff at large. So training the entire organization or like different departments. Now, one of the latest communication exercises that we had internally from Harvard, based on the DISC exercise and 5 dysfunctions of highly executive teams. So many of these were really hard to schedule, and it actually took us almost 5 months to find the right time so that it's not in peak work season and people are not like overworked and overstressed. At the same time, it's close to the summer, but not necessarily in the kind of busy summer season where lots of people are missing, like lots of other challenges of how to get people actually not interrupt their processes, not make their lives harder, but also get them on board, not in holidays. So this is kind of a challenge that other organizations are facing as well. Keep in mind that this training thing is also happening and organizations are doing that one way or another. And also, if you're aligning your sales processes overlapping with that, you're definitely going to get poor results if you're reaching out during holidays or near any learning sessions that they're undertaking. 35 is keeping up to speed with innovations. Now, this one is a bit painful, but the more you're neck deep and kind of super busy, head down with work, the harder it is for you to keep up with innovations and with things that are happening. This is why lots of people actually lost on the opportunities of both the kind of blockchain world, and I'm not talking about cryptocurrencies, but actually implementing blockchain behind the scenes, or NFTs, which is a way to actually do tokens at work and gamify engagements between people, and also give them some form of a kind of equity in a different way. And now the same thing happens with AI. Same goes with the metaverse, by the way. One of the organizations I worked as a fractional CTO, they were actually handing out metaverse kind of Quest glasses, and we were testing out lots of initiatives. We launched some products on the metaverse as early as 2.5 years ago, and lots of that innovation is happening from investing into innovation, trying to get some early adopters to be following new trends. Same goes for attending events and reading newsletters, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube and stuff, but it's really hard to allocate company time to initiatives like this. So in most cases, the executive team is in charge of that, some directors, some hustlers, some people who are really passionate and motivated and kind of attending to these events, community managers, just spending more time keeping track of industry events and kind of new initiatives. And then it's also pretty tricky to onboard them and just bring them upstream to the core of the organization. Last chapter is compliance, and I'm not going to dive too deep into that, and I know it's a long video. I appreciate your spending the time. If you haven't yet, please like, comment, subscribe. It's really appreciated. Share it with a friend, and if you like it, then let me know in the comments and what sort of other videos are going to be helpful for you. So let's jump right into the last 3 biggest business challenges that we are seeing here. 36 is tax management. Now, if you work locally, some organizations are having an okay time and it's fairly easy, or they know a local accountant, a CPA, a tax firm that is able to handle that for themselves. So in some cases, that's pretty easy. But in many cases, especially if you're in the European Union or if you're working internationally, it's really tough to handle tax management, both for the organization and for employment and for kind of other reasons. Just making sure you're compliant, you stay on top of everything, like taxes and refunds and what constitutes as a company expense, and how and where you can offload this and optimize that, where can you invest and how, and like contractors and freelancers, lots of other kind of different things. As I've been working with Dula for setting up external LLCs, it has been one of my best solutions for non-US companies, and not just non-US but US too, to form separate LLCs for tax management as kind of standalone micro entities. It's also one of my best ways to do holding corporations, because this way you can just set up 5 different LLCs agencies and kind of manage small chunks of like freelancers or people or automated SaaS or only work with vendors and kind of agencies and like almost incur no expenses. But in any case, like whatever you do, organizations are having a pretty tough time dealing with that. You probably see that with Amazon, with Google, with Meta, having a pretty tough time staying compliant in the States with like privacy laws, in Europe with the European Union, with GDPR, with AI Act, then in some other Asian countries, like where and what and how do they roll out? Is it compliant? Is it legal? It's getting pretty tricky to stay compliant internationally, and taxes are one of the biggest reasons for that. Number 37 is privacy laws such as GDPR and CCPA and lots of others. Now, consumers, general people online, they care about privacy. They don't want their data to leak. They don't want their data to be sold, like browsing behavior or others. So they're trying to optimize that as best as possible. So this is something that companies are really caring for and something that you need to care for yourself. So make sure that you stay compliant. Otherwise, the fees are just exorbitant and they're almost impossible to pay. And last one is employment overhead. Now, why is that important? Because in most places, if you need to do layoffs, first off, it's terrible. So if you overhire, it's terrible because you can't really compensate. But second, you need to deal with severance, with like lobbies, with syndicates, with lots of other different organizations. So just try to stay lean at all points in time. And if you need to do layoffs, just make sure you do the possible extension of like upfront notices and severance pays and possibly giving them other opportunities to join another organization and so forth. Just try to be as supportive as possible. So that's it. I know it was a long video, but I'm really glad you stuck around to the end of the video. Again, this is one of my most popular blog posts out there, and I've been reached out by dozens of different professors in different universities in North America, in Europe, also some in Asia, teaching these materials in their classes. So this may actually make them easier for them to also teach internally. But if you like that, follow me again, like, subscribe, let me know in the comments what you like. Take a look at mariopeshev.com and kind of where I store my personal resources, or check out my book MBA Disrupted, which was released in May and became a 2-time bestseller. Thanks for your time and see you around.